Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. We've got multiple news items to talk about in today's video, and as you might have guessed, several of them revolve around what happened in Saturday night's Xfinity Series race, including Denny Hamlin calling out three specific drivers for their behavior, and one of those drivers, Austin Hill, going into detail about his role in the race, admitting he was embarrassed. Brad Keselowski also had some thoughts on the hot topic of conversation this week and proposed a solution to fix it. Interestingly, his former Penske teammate Joey Logano and Joe Gibbs Racing competition director Chris Gabart completely disagree. Plus, new NASCAR Commissioner Steve Phelps talked about the Xfinity Series race, respect in the garage, and self-policing, and said he wasn't sure whether or not it would work. Todd Gilliland met with reporters yesterday, and his response suggested that it definitely would. Also, yesterday during Logano's weekly appearance on SiriusXM NASCAR radio, it was quite interesting to hear what he had to say about aggressive driving and specifically about pushovers. He noted there are a couple in the Cup Series. And our last news item is an absolutely hysterical video I saw late yesterday on social media with Kyle Busch and his wife, Samantha, that has gone viral for obvious reasons. Back in February at Daytona 500 Media Day, I asked Busch about these types of videos. I think you'll appreciate his answer. And finally, we'll have our By the Numbers segment, including our weekly race progression graphs and our last 5 races analysis. However, before we start crunching the numbers, let's go back to Monday and Denny Hamlin's Actions Detrimental podcast. Unsurprisingly, the Xfinity Series race on Saturday night was a topic of discussion. While discussing the subject, Hamlin pointed out that it wasn't just the last lap of the race, but there was other aggressive driving throughout the day. And he called out 3 specific drivers.
I can speak to what I am as a fan. I can speak to what I am as a car owner. And I can tell you, I'm not impressed. Austin Hill, Sam Mayer, Sammy Smith, all drove like assholes.
On Tuesday, Austin Hill made an appearance on SiriusXM NASCAR radio. First, he talked about his unexpected race win, the 100th Xfinity win for Richard Childress Racing, and then was asked about the overall racing product at the Paperclip. Here's what he had to say.
There's so many things that happened on the racetrack on Saturday night that went unnoticed that, you just don't see. Like TV can't see everything that went down and things that happened on the racetrack that ended up brewing and causing some chaos that ensured. But, I just thought that, all Martinsvilles that I've been a part of in the Xfinity Series have been pretty chaotic, and it comes down to the end of the race and everybody's beating and banging really hard. But that one was like next level. I kind of just went with the mindset going into Martinsville was, if you run into me and you rough me up, I'm going to run into you and rough you up, and I'm not going to get mad about it, and hopefully you don't get mad about it. And at the end of the day, it's Martinsville, and I'm going to leave there wherever we finish. It's just going to be, it is what it is, and somehow we came out on top with all the craziness that went on. I think Martinsville, for whatever reason, brings out the worst in the Xfinity Series, for whatever reason that is. I truly believe that all the other races, that the tracks that we go to for the most part, we put on the best race in NASCAR, but Martinsville was definitely an embarrassment. I mean, all of us drivers, all 40 of us that were out there should be embarrassed of what went on, and I don't take it lightly, and I hope that none of them take it lightly on what transpired. You can go back and listen to some of my radio communication where at one point I said I hated Martinsville and I hated this track, and then another point I said something along the lines of, man, I really hate racing this way. Like, there was just times on the racetrack that I hated to even be out there, and then to come home with the victory and all that was just, like I said, I mean, there's no other way to describe it other than it was just insane, crazy, all those types of words there.
I have to give him credit for being honest about his role. But then he was asked about how it can be corrected.
NASCAR's in a tough spot. I don't know how they what they do to police that, because I do think that it is only at Martinsville for the most part. I can't really think of another track that ends up being crazy like that. I mean, Bristol's not even that way. So, I don't know if it's just one of those things that Martinsville's the only one that you kind of have to look at and see if there's anything that we can do differently there. I honestly, I kind of liked a little bit of what Bowyer said about on the broadcast about just letting the boys have at it and not have the security guards involved, because I do think, now that I have a weekend to sleep on it and think about it, I do think ever since NASCAR has implemented the fines and everything else that's went on with any type of fights that go on outside of the racetrack, or outside of the race car rather, all the fines and everything that happen, I think it's getting to the point where the drivers just think, well, I can just go in there and wreck this guy, because if he fights me, he's going to get fined for it anyways. Like, the drivers, any of them in the series, in the sport, if you think that they don't think that way, then you got another thing coming, because I know how a lot of these drivers act and how they think and stuff, and I wouldn't put it past a lot of them to think, well, if I just go in there and I wreck this guy, if he fights me, he's going to get fined for it, or maybe suspended, or whatever may happen. He's going to get docked points, so I'm just going to go in there and make him mad, because he can't fight me anyways, because he's going to get in trouble for it. So who knows? We might need to go back to the old days of just gloves off and boys have at it.
Did you hear who he mentioned? Clint Bowyer. Here's a reminder of what Bowyer had to say about it during the broadcast on Sunday.
That was such an easy answer, and something that they're going to have to step in on. But just to say respect is going to fix it, well, then they need to get out of the way with those security guys and let those guys learn about respect.
Respect, as in the old saying, boys have at it. Remember, Austin Hill is a big boy and isn't afraid to throw down. Myatt Snyder knows this all too well. More on this specific hard-hitting solution in a minute. But I first want to bring up what Brad Keselowski had to say about the subject on X. He wrote, "I've been really quiet on this over the last few days, but it's clear this is important to fix, and also clear that it's bigger than one race weekend. My 2 cents, the solution needs to come from the car owners, not NASCAR. Until the car owners are willing to park their drivers for getting this out of control, very little will change. I get that they're all scared to park a funded driver out of fear. They will lose the money to continue to operations. However, at some point, that's the risk you have to take to get this right. I believe if all the teams do it together, it would work." Joe Gibbs Racing Director of Competition, Chris Gabart, had a response. "I have immense respect for Keselowski, but I just don't get this. In what other sport does the team penalize a player for a flagrant foul? Answer: no other sport. This is simply a flagrant foul. The refs have to be willing to blow the whistle. Even if they get a call wrong every now and then, that over some time is when it will stop." On Tuesday, Joey Logano made his weekly appearance on his Behind the Wheel segment on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and was asked about the topic and specifically Keselowski's remarks. Take a listen.
That's why I think it's got to be on NASCAR. Like I understand what Brad's saying, but that's when he's the boss. But as soon as someone's paying you, you're no longer the boss. The guy that's got the money is the boss, right? Like no matter what you're doing, the guy that's got the money runs the show. And if that's the driver, then that's the case. If that's the team owner, then that's the case. But in all cases, NASCAR runs the show, right? We are racing. It's their sandbox. How many times have we said that, right? It's NASCAR's sandbox. We're just playing in it. So if that's the case, set us some boundaries. Set us the rules. And as long as we know the rules, everyone can play by the rules, right?
But that wasn't all Logano had to say. Later on, a fan called in and asked about aggressive driving, retaliation, and asked why couldn't Taylor Gray be the bigger man in the future and just prove he's the better driver with the better race car and pass him and not do anything about it. Logano had some strong feelings on the topic.
But when I'm like in battle, right? Like you're in war here. You can't just take it and accept it and say, I'm going to be the bigger person. No, you're the weaker person in that case. At least in my opinion. That's my crazy opinion. I don't know if it's different for everyone. But that's my point, that why NASCAR has to step in here, because that's how I see it. Like that's what I feel like I have to do. And that's the part that, like, just as bad as it is for the sport, it's just as bad for Taylor to feel like this is what he has to do. Right? Like, and that sucks. Like, because it's not fun to be in that spot either. Like, you don't want to have to do that, but you kind of got to. Unless, in my opinion, you're looked at as a pushover. And the next time someone has the opportunity to do it too, they're probably going to do it because they know there's no consequences.
You don't have to name any names, but are there some pushovers that you race with on Sunday in your mind when you come up to them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you who they are, right? I keep that to myself, but
wait for the break.
But absolutely. There's not many, though. I will say there's not many in the cup level, but there's a couple.
And then late yesterday on the Holler Talk podcast, Commissioner Steve Phelps was the guest, and he talked about a bunch of different topics. One of them was Saturday night's Xfinity Series race.
If you have a fight this week, or a disagreement, we'll say, that disagreement will carry over to next week, right? So when we go to Darlington, and maybe Darlington's a little different because of the speeds that you're running at, right? But
Bristol's
what
right
happens at Bristol?
Yeah.
Bristol's right around the corner, right?
Yep.
I don't know, and I'm not suggesting that.
Well, there's also
those things. Self-policing. Does it work? Does it not work? I'm not going to comment on that. I know lots of people have lots of opinions about, what happened, on Saturday in particular. To me, it's an unfortunate situation. It's kind of heat of the moment. It's winning at all costs, and that is tough, right? And I do think that, you hear veteran drivers all the time say, these kids just don't know how to drive, right? They don't have any respect for each other. They don't have respect for me. They should, make sure that they are, minding their P's and Q's. So, and pay respect as I've earned it. And I think that's true to some degree. I also think that people are there to compete and to win. So there's a balance there. And when a driver crosses the line, then we are going to step in and make sure that, we do what's necessary in order to get order on the track and in the garage.
Did you hear his comments in there about not knowing if self-policing would work? Well, yesterday I was on a call with reporters and Front Row Motorsports driver Todd Gilliland. He was asked this exact question about self-policing. Here's what he had to say about it.
Guys jam into line and you're being very aggressive getting down. And then, you're the guy behind that's right on this guy's bumper. You're getting hit from behind. And then it ends up causing, what looks like a bigger wreck. But, I don't know. In my mind, there is still a big difference between, like, you can visually see, right? There's some very blatant ones and then more so racing incidences. But, yeah, I think, the self-policing thing is interesting, right? I mean, I don't want to get punched in the face, obviously, but I think, that would definitely stop a lot of stuff. And I don't want to see people fighting even, to be honest, right? It's just not really my thing. But, yeah, when I get into guys, it's, first thing I don't want, to get into anything like that. And it definitely deters you from doing some dumb stuff.
Getting punched in the face sounds like a pretty good deterrent to me. And finally, our last story before our By the Number segment is a video I saw late yesterday on X from Samantha Busch, Kyle's wife. As you can see, she's written just returning the favor. But the subject of the video, as she writes in the video, is annoying my husband by doing all the things he does to me. And then she proceeds to do 5 different things that he does to her. The video had over 130,000 views this morning because it's absolutely hilarious. Well, back in December, I saw another similar home life video that Busch posted about her and her husband. So in February on Daytona 500 Media Day, I asked Kyle about these videos and his role in creating them.
Yeah, I play along with it. Happy wife, happy life. So, certainly it's sometimes fun, and other times I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing? But obviously it's just kind of neat, kind of just shows some background of our personalities and things like that and who we are.
As a married man of 25 plus years, I can totally relate. Happy wife, happy life. All right, and now it's time for our By the Number segment. And remember, all of these graphics are courtesy of my friend Joel Stubin and can be found at stube.com. And first up is our race progression graphs. I don't know if you recall, but the last couple of weeks at Las Vegas and Homestead, the HMS cars were all nicely grouped together near the top, while the JGR cars were kind of all over the graph. This week we have a role reversal. As you can see, Denny Hamlin won the race, but all 4 cars ran well for the day, including the number 54 of Ty Gibbs, who scored his best finish of the year at 13th. And now, moving over to HMS, it's just the opposite of what we had seen from them in the last couple of graphs. Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson were steady and both finished inside the top 5, while Alex Bowman started in the front and plummeted after his loose wheel and never recovered. William Byron was on a roller coaster. Speaking of roller coasters, that is the perfect description for the 4 cars at Team Penske and Wood Brothers. Only Joey Logano was consistently running in the front from start to finish and earned his first top 10 of the year. Blaney started near the back and finished 12th, while Josh Berry and Austin Cindric's days went downhill from the start. I have to talk about RFK racing and the up and down start, as you can see. Chris Buescher started 6th, but was involved in that early incident and dropped to the back. Brad Keselowski had a Brad Keselowski kind of day in 2025, finishing 26th. And surprise, surprise, Ryan Preece scored his 3rd consecutive top 10 finish for the first time in his career. Who had Ryan Preece being better than Brad K this year on their bingo card? And now it's time for our last 5 races analysis. Christopher Bell holds down the top spot for a 2nd consecutive week with an average finishing position of 9 even after his runner-up result at Martinsville. After Bell, there's been some movement in the top 5, and incredibly, it's all HMS cars. Last week, Chase Elliott was 7th overall with an AFP of 12.4. This week, he slots in at number 2 in a tie with his HMS teammate William Byron with an average finishing position of 9.2. Elliott's got 4 top 10s in that time, while Byron has 3. Following them is their teammate Kyle Larson, who was 2nd last week. This week, the number 5 driver is 4th and has an AFP of 10 even, and he is followed by Alex Bowman, who moves down a spot from last week and is 5th with an average finishing position of 10.4. His 27th at Martinsville, the lone blemish in his last 5. I also want to point out that despite his win and improving his average finishing position from 11.8 to 10.8 this week, Denny Hamlin comes in at number 6. I think him dropping in this analysis just goes to show it's all about consistency. As you can see, the number 11's last 5 includes a couple of inflated results at COTA and Las Vegas. Rounding out the top 10 are Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, and there you see Ryan Preece in those 3 consecutive top 10 finishes. He's at number 9, and Tyler Reddick comes in at number 10. Josh Berry dropped out of the top 10 with his 32nd place at Martinsville. Others of note, Brad Keselowski has an AFP at 22.2 over his last 5, while Ty Gibbs earned his first top 15 of the year and moved up from 34th in the overall rankings to 29th. And as you can see, a couple of spots behind him is Ryan Blaney. He's got a few more weeks to get rid of those disastrous DNFs before his AFP moves back up the chart. All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. I want to hear what you thought about it. Let's start with the comments of Austin Hill. What did you think of his admission to driving like he did? And I'm curious to hear what you think of Brad Keselowski, Chris Gabart, Joey Logano, and Todd Gilliland's thoughts on the topic of aggressive driving and how it can be fixed. Who do you agree with? And of course, I have to get your thoughts on the Kyle Busch, Samantha Busch video. And lastly, let me know what you thought of our By the Numbers segment this week and any particular numbers that got your attention. Thanks again for checking out the latest video and supporting the channel. As always, I truly appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day.